There we go. Right, welcome, folks. Thanks for your interest. Thanks for making the time to join. My name is Scott, and today we're going to talk about demystifying product. In fact, we're not even going to talk about it, we're going to do it. My name is Scott. I'm Director of Product for Third Consultancy. We focus in three areas: discovery, recovery, and delivery. Discovery for us is the tricky upfront stuff needed to set you up for success. We actually split that into three areas. We've got opportunity pipelines. How do you find your best opportunities? Pre-discovery, which we call exploration, and discovery itself, which is really about defining problems before you commit to solutions. Recovery is maybe work wasn't set up for success, or things have simply changed. We come in and get things back on track for you. And delivery is that we've got a 35-person strong multidisciplinary team with experience of supporting over 100 projects across public services, education, healthcare, and financial services. Our team's made up of experts who are leaders in their field, including heads of business analysis, heads of UCD, and heads of product. And it's product that we're looking at today. And we're going to start demystifying product management by going right back to the source and uncovering where the role came from. Well, product management didn't start in Silicon Valley. It actually started with soap. In 1931, this chap called Neil McElroy at Procter & Gamble wrote a short memo. He was trying to figure out how to sell more soap. Neil led on a soap called Camomay, and he was really frustrated that one big brand or one big program or one big initiative took all of the attention within the company and left smaller brands like Camomay behind. He was also frustrated that decision making was distributed across the organization, so actually getting anything done took ages. And he wanted every brand, every initiative to be set up for success on its own terms and run like a mini business in its own right. He wanted to focus on his customers, not on his company's internal structures. And so in his now famous memo, he proposed three radical ideas. First was each product or brand should have someone responsible for it. Second, that teams should be decentralized and empowered to make decisions on their own. And third, that senior leaders should step back from delivery and focus on strategy. That short memo laid the groundwork for modern product management. It didn't mention agile, didn't mention roadmaps, didn't mention OKRs, but it introduced something that still matters today: ownership, clarity, and customer focus. That's the heart of product management. And in many ways, demystifying product management is about returning to that. You think about that empowered team, you need several perspectives if it's going to work well. You need leadership, why we're here, the impact we need to have. Leadership isn't always in the team day to day, but it is represented through clear strategy or clear organizational goals. You need a perspective about aiming, which is what's the best opportunity to achieve our goals. You need a perspective of assembly. How do the people and plans and tasks come together to actually bring that goal to life? And then, really importantly, you need people to actually get it done, the people who accomplish those tasks and make this thing become a reality. Now, all things being equal, a product person brings the aiming perspective to the team. And the thing that makes that work is radical focus. That means naming the biggest and best opportunity to achieve the goal or the outcome you need. And importantly, focusing on that, even when everything else feels urgent. Because saying yes to things is easy, but a lot of the job is saying no to things, the things that will spread you thin, distract you, and delay you from getting where you need to be. Fundamentally, aiming and keeping focus on that aim is at the heart of product management. Because product is a job of decisions. It's about helping teams make the best possible decisions They're mobilizing around them. And the decisions are never perfect because no one has totally accurate confidence. Some people are overconfident, some are underconfident. Teams and organizations are the same. So much of product management is about correcting that bias one notch at a time. So it's helping the overconfident to pause and helping the underconfident to step forward. And that takes more than frameworks and tools like roadmaps and OKRs. It takes leadership skills and people skills, the ability to listen, to balance and nudge a decision into place. So far, so good, right? We've got SOAP, we've got ownership, we've got clarity, radical focus, better decisions. Well, here's the catch. Most product managers I speak with don't feel like they're doing proper product, and it's not their fault. It's because the story we've been told about product management is a myth. Let's look at that myth. I've been around product management for a while. I co-wrote the product manager role description for government. I've recruited and managed about 200 product managers. I run a network of 150 product leaders, and I've just spoken to hundreds more. And it makes me sad how many people feel they're not doing proper products. They often feel like imposters. They feel like they're letting the side down. And why is that? It's because they've been told that proper product looks like this: a neat software as a service product, a roadmap, objectives and key results, a backlog full of tickets, sprints, ceremonies, maybe something like the Spotify model. You could play product bingo with this. And told that if you don't have those things, the myth says you're not a real product manager. And the reality is those things can be useful, but they are just tools. They're not the truth of the role. This photo is from Pinterest. It's of a perfect kitchen drawer. Everything has its place. Everything is ordered. Now, what I've experienced is those tools I just referenced, they often require a clean slate to work in a pure way. They require an organization to have started from scratch in the last 5 or 10 years with no history, no baggage, no mess. And they suggest that all you need to do is drop in that model or framework and everything will line up. But let's be honest, that's not reality for most organizations. This is reality. This is a photo of my kitchen drawer. It's a dumping ground for 3 people and a mix of all of our approaches. And most organizations are a messy mix of cultures, half-finished transformations, layers of organizational debt, competing agendas. They're not blank slates, they're junk drawers. And the main myth of product management is centered around that. It's that there's this blank space where those tools can be dropped and slotted into neat boxes. I have never seen any organization that neat in my entire career in reality. And that's why so many product managers feel alienated. They're trying to follow this mythical script in a world that doesn't fit it. So if the myth of product management doesn't fit reality for 99% of cases, what does? The truth is that an adaptable mindset is just as much use as those structures, as those common tools and frameworks. Because an adaptable mindset lets us operate in the mess. Let's start with something humble, the backlog. If you haven't heard of this before, it's a core tool of product management, and it can feel like a core part of our identity. But people often view the backlog as a single thing, like a list of things to do for the product. But really, if you have the product mindset, it's 2 things. There is the product backlog, which is your goals, your bets, your aims. And there is the sprint backlog, your tasks and the things that assemble people and work around those aims. The product backlog is where you decide what to aim at. The sprint backlog is how you assemble the people and the plans needed to get it done. A task is done when you do it, but a goal is only done when the outcome is real. So for example, if your goal is to halve the number of steps in customer or user registration, it's not done when the form is redesigned. It's done when actual users or customers have the number of steps cut in half. That's what real product looks like in practice. And here's the thing, aligning people around the right goal and saying no to the wrong goals takes time. If it takes time, it's work. And if it's work, it should be in the backlog. But so many teams only list design, research, and software development tickets or tasks. This invisible work of alignment doesn't make it in. Alignment tasks like aligning senior leaders when a goal cuts across their agendas, retraining staff to use a new thing, supporting users to change to a new thing, making policy changes, fixing referral pathways. All of those things require us to orientate ourselves within the messy reality of lives of our customers, of our users, and of our organization itself, both as a whole and the staff within it. If that work isn't visible, half of reality disappears. And teams feel like they're failing because everything is taking too long, when really they're just blind to half their job. Something I found really interesting is when I look back at the prior careers of the lead product managers I'd hired and worked with over the years, the most common background wasn't design or software development. It was actually science. Forensic scientist, pharmaceutical scientist, research scientist. I just thought this was a weird quirk for a while, but now it makes sense. These are people who know how to enter ambiguity, set up small experiments, and manage risk step by step. They can help some people to pause. They can help some people to step forward. That's the skill set that product demands in complex organizations. Not just building features, but experimenting, focusing, adapting, and aligning. So here's how I define a product mindset in a way that helps us to demystify what the role is and make it work in broader context than just new organizations leading on software as a service. So here's what product mindset looks like in practice when things are messy. Number one, learn in motion. Don't assume, experiment. Test, learn, and evolve. Think like a scientist. Quite often, movement creates clarity, and we need to help groups of people to have the confidence needed to take that step. Number two, focus on outcomes. Always ask, what problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? And how will we know if it's working? Then radically focus on that and just keep all of the other things away until you've done it. Third, build trust, not just technology. A lot of the reality of the job is creating the alignment needed to make decisions that matter. This alignment is just as critical as the work to develop software features or build anything else, but often it remains invisible. It's half the job, and we need to make it as visible as possible. So let me pull all this together. Act 1 was about returning to the source of product management, thinking about ownership, clarity, and user focus. Act 2 was about the myth that all organizations can just wipe the slate clean and drop in a single pure model or framework or set of tools. And the alienation that people feel when that theory doesn't match with the mess of reality. And Act 3 was about how we can orientate ourselves in reality and move forwards with confidence if we adopt a plain language, adaptable mindset. So here's my invitation to you. What's the one best opportunity you could aim at this week? Name it, focus on it, and move towards it. Because that's the reality of what product is. If you're interested in this, I've written a book about this recently, specifically about product management in messy organizations. It's called Product in Service. You can see that on Amazon. As I said, my name is Scott. I'm Director of Product for Herd Consultancy. We can help you with discovery, recovery, and delivery. And we have many other talks going on this week, so please do check those out. We're going to move into questions and answers in a second, but if following that you want to talk about product management or need support with product management, please drop me an email, scott.colfer@herd.consulting. Herd is online at herd.consulting, or if you just want to connect on LinkedIn, please go ahead and do so. It's linkedin.com/in/Scott Colfer. And that is just under 25 minutes. I'm going to stop there so we can move on to question and answer. And let's have a look. Yeah, please feel free. If you want to ask your question in person, please do. I'll make a start with the questions in chat. We have a question from Mark, which says, it would be good to see the view you have of the Venn diagram between business analysis, product owner, and product manager. Yeah, sure thing. Mark, if it's not putting you on the spot, is there any more context to that? Anything you wanted to kind of share to round that out a bit?
So yeah, it's just we're currently in the process of like moving to very much more of a product environment, and we've got a team of business analysts. We're bringing in product owners and concept of product managers. But I think it's a bit. It was just a general question because I think it's something that I think gets a lot of people confused quite a lot. What the distinction in the different roles are and how you can define it. So clear, like have that clarity so people know what's expected of them and where those handoffs are and how to manage that effectively.
Cool, thank you. That's really helpful. My caveat is, of everybody in my consultancy, I'm probably the least qualified to talk about business analysis with any authority. Go to any of the other talks and they are much more authoritative. I can answer that from a product perspective, and I'll probably talk about transitional times and connecting. So if I approach that question, first of all, just from a purely practical, pragmatic sense, that if an organization is making a move from like one way of working to another, there's a period of time where the old model doesn't work, but the new model hasn't been figured out yet. And quite often, if I ignore the roles for a second, just think about what's needed. Quite often an organization is maybe taking its first steps out of like an enterprise technology setup. And so quite often, I think what I see is there's a need for a kind of a role that is potentially a combination of those three things. And that maybe the Venn diagram is that there's one role that absorbs that Venn diagram. So there might be a need for like analysis work still. And there may not be a mature research setup yet. And or even if there is, that research setup might need business analysis style skills still, if it's looking at how, you know, user sentiment, customer sentiment fits in the context of workflows, systems diagrams, that kind of thing. There's quite often a need for kind of like delivery management. So how do we turn insights into actionable insights and then tasks that a team can accomplish? And then the kind of product role in the team can quite often be, how do I help internally with the decisions about what we are building, whilst sometimes the kind of the overall goal and even the solution has potentially been designed to a greater or lesser extent. So it's sometimes like relatively narrow decision making. And then when it comes to product management, that focus on what's being solved. For example, if that work is happening still within a program structure, it could be that the demystified version of product that I just talked about would really take place in the program management team, because that's where they're really defining the problem to be solved and the value. And so it could be that products in reality actually sits in that kind of a space. And then you have a delivery team that's still, it's kind of 1, 2, 3 steps more empowered to make decisions, but still, and this is just inevitable, it just takes a while to change, still in a relatively solution specific space. So that's thing number one. If I think about, maybe things have moved on a bit, I kind of see business analysis and delivery management as well, actually, as kind of connecting roles. And I mean that in a couple of ways. So one is, I've just talked about a mindset that helps with adaptability. In a longer version of this talk, I talk about like orientation as well. And you often really need to orientate within your organization. You need to know that the thing we're doing here, how does that fit within the broader change load of staff that are being targeted by like 13 and a half other things? How does it align with contract expiry, that kind of thing, you know, just pragmatic internal orientation. And I think that business analysis can be kind of uniquely strong in that orientation activity sometimes. I think there's also the connection within the team. So service design, user research, excellent skills to have in the team. Service design may create something like a service blueprint. User research may create something like user journeys, both really essential perspectives and insights to have. And teams might struggle to turn those insights into action. They may see those and think, oh, what do I do today? And I see business analysis as another kind of a connector within the team. How do we take these insights and turn them into actionable insights, and either lead the prioritization of which of those we go on first, or support the team or an individual like a product person to make that decision. So yeah, I think there's a pragmatic approach of just during transition, sometimes those all become the same person, and that person has to figure out, like, based on the activity I'm undertaking, which hat do I need to wear right now? Yeah. But I think broadly that kind of connection, that connecting activity, particularly like orientation within the organization, can be valuable. I just kind of talked at you for a while. Mark, did that correctly understand your question, and was that of any use?
Yeah, no, it's useful. It's like, it's one of those, it's just such a big topic. It's like the whole people concerned, like, bring it, like BAs, like, well, where do I fit in the puzzle? Like, because I look up that there's a certain amount of, well, and the same with delivery managers. So you've got product owners coming in, and you're like, well, no, these are things I've always done. And it's like that transition is just an interesting one, and I thought other people might be in like similar experience. So I thought it was just an interesting, get a different insight into it. So yeah, no, it was cool.
Nice. Thanks so much. I think we've got a hand up. Franco, please go ahead.
Hello, Scott.
Hello.
Just a quick one from me. How important is it for a product manager to have deep technical subject matter expertise in the product? And what kind of level should that be?
I think working backwards from the context. So the root of the word, like technical, is technique. So there's often an assumption that only kind of engineering is technical, but engineering is a form of technique for software development. So there are certain organizations where if it is a software as a service commercial company, where the things that are engineered really are the thing, you're probably going to need a deeper set of technical understanding than if you are a product person working in a central government department where one of your internal clients could be a policy development space where there is no software being created, and there the technique, the technical skill required is opportunity mapping, analysis, and prioritization. So I guess the the most useful answer I can give is the most adaptable mindset I've found is that scientific one. I'd say that that is true no matter what product context you're working in. There are some spaces where you absolutely you'll find it a steep learning curve if you don't have a deep technical understanding. So one of my last hands-on roles was leading a cloud platform, which was 2015. I had a very steep learning curve in continuous integration, Jenkins, Amazon Web Services, all those kind of things. So not having that meant there was a steep learning curve. Even in that context, to be honest, though, it was almost the case that the last thing they needed was an additional technical perspective. They needed somebody to say, who are we helping? How are we helping them? What's the benchmark? What's the first improvement we want to make? So even in that context, the broader skills are still needed. But yeah, I'd say I would never say everybody always needs those deep technical skills. I do think there are contexts where you're going to find it more difficult if you don't. There are other contexts where sometimes if people identify too readily with those technical skills, if it is more about kind of opportunity mapping, they might struggle to translate what they've got for that context because they've not necessarily steered as closely towards the broader mindset and have gone more towards specialist tools. But if there's a space you're working in and that's the one you want to work in and technical skills are part of it, then 100%. Is that of any kind of use? I know that was quite a broad answer.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott. That is helpful. I think, I guess in organizations we tend to lean more, if you think about technical in the terms of like software delivery, which is its whole, own beast, and actually policy, strategy, culture, that kind of stuff. Organizations tend to, especially when they're changing something, they'll lean more heavily towards one and neglect the other, and that can often be the case in terms of when I've worked with product owners more than product managers. It's they lean one way or the other. Either they're all deep in the strategy and but actually getting them to talk about the technical delivery and the realities and getting them to get on board with that stuff is difficult, or the other way around, where they're very well versed in agile but actually they become a bit of a scrum master, let's say. So it's interesting. Yeah, I guess what I'm taking away is it can be both, and it depends on both or either, and it depends on what the organization kind of needs.
Yeah, I think even in a software engineering context, and then this will be true kind of for any product roles, as you progress, the skills change. So in delivery teams, it's how do we deliver these things? Middle management, and I use that term, middle management is critical. Middle management is about coordination between delivery and strategy across teams and across the other middle managers. That's another set of skills again. And then senior leadership is how do we make a small number of decisions that matter? And that's another set of skills too. And I saw somebody else, I think Kelly asked about product training. And I've encountered a few. So there's one called General Assembly, which I taught on for a while, and I took one of the first cohorts that came across. I'm out of date with it a bit, but certainly 7 or 8 years ago, up until then, was aware of it, and that was good. There were some other ones that have come up recently. There is Product School, I believe, and I think Teresa Torres does some stuff, particularly on opportunity mapping, opportunity solution trees, which is useful. And then Osra, mate, you've been patient, you had your hand up, so I'm going to come shut myself up after this and come to you.
Yeah,
The final thing I'd say is loads of the invisible stuff that I talked about. I'm not sure you always need product training. So I think I call it like systems leadership. So you've got negotiation, mediation, conflict management, storytelling, pitching, coaching. All of those kind of things are so useful for the role in the right context. And you don't necessarily need to go to product specific training for them. So I'd say, yes, you can get product specific training that will probably lean slightly kind of over index the structured skills, the OKRs, the roadmaps. I'd say there's loads of skills around mindset and orientation, adaptability, like conflict management, mediation, that you can go to things specifically for them. I'm now going to stop there though, and over to you.
Yeah, I think you answered most of the questions from Franco and then Kelly about the training. So I'm a BA. I've been interested in product management for a very long time. One of the reasons because I do see similarities in the job description, basically what we're doing and what is required. I think whilst you were talking, the first question I had I wrote down was because I've been to trainings. I've done some trainings in product management, and that tilted towards more of the technical side as the agile bit and all of that. But my question was, what's now actually what does the product stand for in product management? Because I'm beginning to see diverse ways. I've seen product management that has nothing to do with the tech world, has nothing to do at all, and I'm just trying to like weigh it. It will follow the same things that you talk: roadmap, OKRs, all of those things, aligning teams. But is it one bit? Can we look at it as product management as one bit, or does it spread across? Because like someone else said, was we've got product managers, we've got product owners, and I'm in some organizations you can't tell the difference between a product owner and a product manager. I'm just trying to get this clarification in my mind so I know what it is I'm actually going into and what I'm going for, rather than just being about the bush and just going to different trainings. Yeah, thank you.
So like, I think the way I approached that, I think the bit of what you said that stood out to me is the kind of what's the product? Yeah, and it's really useful, to be honest. I would say I'm not smart enough to be able to give like the platonic ideal description of what a product is. And I think that is useful to say out loud because loads of people get hung up on this. It can become like a total like never-ending spiral of like, what's the product? And so the most useful answer I can give is, I don't think it matters if we're clear on the mindset. If the mindset is how do we radically focus on the best opportunity to achieve our outcome, it doesn't need to matter as much what a product is. Because particularly when an organization is in transition, it might take years for it to be usefully clear what a product is. So if I think about experience doing product and working with product folks in really complex public services, you may be pointed at the top level, the service itself. So I think of something like, for me, something like the legal aid agency. Legal aid is a single service. So that's what I'm using to define the word service. It's where, so the issue is that, you know, justice system is quite poorly designed. So if you're poor, you're excluded from it. You know, that's one way you could describe it. So legal aid is almost like cashback at the point of criminal justice, in order to allow people to be included in the criminal justice system. And I consider legal aid to be a single service. A product person in government could be pointed at that kind of level, literally trying to develop policy.
Okay.
And like there is no product there, and you could totally get lost. But the mindset,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? Yeah. So
it could be a service. It could be because I think my problem was more like, okay, is it a project? Is it a change? Is it something you're supposed to do? But as long as there's an outcome to, we have something to do. How are we going to do it? And the delivery of the outcome of basically what we have done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can become slightly more product-like within that service.
Okay.
So you don't even need to call it a product, but you can say it's fulfilling the intent behind the mindset. If you know any service, you can break it down into pre-service, during service, and post-service. And each of those have service user experiences, like, you know, find out about the thing, apply for the thing, get the thing, manage the thing. If you can help an organization to join up everything needed to run that service, where it's, you know, totally designed as a collective experience, that's quite product-like.
Okay.
But that's as much about change as it is software development. Likewise with capabilities, you might kind of say, we've got a website. If we bump it up a level, think about the capability of publishing. We're going to actually tackle that capability, and then we build that as a platform. That publishing platform is quite product-like.
Okay.
If that's
makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We'll take a few more questions. Please pop your hands up if anybody would like to ask one directly. I see Tabby has asked, would you agree that project managers are support roles that need more soft skills than hard skills. Would I agree with that? I would agree that we definitely need soft skills. Do I think it's a support role? I think it's leading a particular perspective needed for the team. So I started, I had a former life as a project manager, because I'm old now, quite a long time ago. And if I think that was time, scope, cost. So I was really helping to coordinate this thing. As a product manager, my job is leading on really the best opportunity we've got in front of us. I don't think I would call those support roles. I would just say it's an essential perspective within the team, for all the reasons I shared here. I definitely do agree that the soft skills, the things I've called systems leadership skills, are essential. To give a practical answer for that, I used to review lots of discoveries, so early stage opportunities. And one of the reasons that opportunity might not land with a senior colleague from the team is that the team had logically explained the problem, but hadn't situated it in the life of that senior leader. So, for example, a team might be thinking, this is amazing, this should really go ahead. Turns out the senior leaders just had a massive budget cut. They've got 10 of these opportunities coming at them and only the money to support 3 of them. So in that kind of context, a product manager is really there to help their team explain the value of their opportunity in the context of others. That context is almost as important as the single opportunity itself. And the reason I say that is that's less of a support role. That's more of a leadership role within a particular perspective, which is, it's great, we've got this opportunity. How do we sell it? How do we pitch it? How do we help it to make sense? How do we understand our stakeholder, senior colleague, who's effectively our investor? How do we help them to make the right decision? I hope, Tabby, that was of some use. Please shout if not, and I'll very happily try and improve that answer. Let's go up. Kelly, you asked about training. Philip kindly shared an additional training course. Kelly, if you are comfortable doing so, is there any more context about kind of particular training needs you're looking at, or anything that you're interested in?
Hiya.
Hi.
So yes, I guess so. I think my path that I was thinking of taking was looking at service design and agile as well. But I think it's probably a bit more of a personal thing. I'm a little bit stuck with whether to actually, whether it's worth pursuing those things or not. So it'd be really nice to kind of hear about your opinion and anybody else's experiences if they've gone down those routes. And yeah, just anything that you can offer in general would be great.
Sure thing. So is it fair to say you're kind of looking at service design and product management, but also open to kind of roles more broadly in the kind of world that they sit in?
Yeah, so essentially, I don't think there's anybody else from Cambridge on this call, so I could probably say that's so essentially I would like to get into product management. I have done a bit of product management before with Alex Blanford, who I think you know. Mm-hmm. However, there's a lot that I can apply to my current role. So it's kind of looking at, which is continuous improvement, but it's looking at where service design fits into this, because there's an awful lot going on. And I think people are looking at working in an agile way, but I'm not sure they really know where to start either. So it's kind of just incorporating all of that and where it fits into product management and how I can fit that into my current role as well.
That's really interesting. I'll focus on the how to fit into current role thing. 'Cause I'm certain that others can kind of share more specifics around training. You can probably find that online.
Mm.
I kind of share two things. I thought for a while that particularly for organizations in transition, producty stuff and continual improvement stuff overlap quite a lot. And it was really interesting to me that somebody I previously worked with, they were a lead product manager in my product lead team, has become a head of product elsewhere. Their specific version of that role is to help programs in the final year of their program funding prepare for, you know, business as usual, where business as usual is how do we make this a long-lived team with, you know, continual improvement baked into it rather than short bursts of project or program funding. And I think that there's a lot of scope for that product mindset to be applied in those spaces. And I see product more and more kind of accidentally, coincidentally, bumping into continual improvement. And I think that's really interesting. The second thing is there's a government department where I'm supporting a role called service owner that I know Cambridge is kind of interested in introducing and started to introduce. And I've just got a lot of insights from about 15 to 20 service owners over the last couple of weeks. And they are basically really, well, they're digital leaders with very broad set of responsibilities in this context. And my observation is that they're quite often doing the messy version of service design, as in literally they may be given a policy. Somebody, you know, holds the decisions about the policy itself. That policy is really intent, and their job is literally to render that intent. So it's not limited to service blueprint. It could literally be you need to in-house the development team because we're currently working with a supplier. You need to design the mini organization needed to bring this to life. You've got to figure out what the purpose is and those kind of things. And none of them would necessarily see themselves as service designers. None of them have that role title. My observation is just there's a version of service design which sits kind of in a kind of delivery or middle management space and has a capital S and a capital D. I think I see kind of digital leaders embodying it in more of a hands-on delivery sense as well. And I think both can become spaces for that. And finally, the truth is there's huge overlap between service design and product, as in, you know, leading a profession, a product profession. Quite often there would be a service designer stepped into a product role if there was a gap, or service designers moving into a product role, and the other direction as well. And I think ultimately, because one of the service designers once said, what is the difference? Should we just like forget about this distinction? If we ignore the roles and go to the perspective again, design is ultimately about rendering the intent, and it's all things being equal. If there's a decision to be made, ideally represents the rendering of that intent. Product is about the decision of what is the most desirable, viable, and feasible opportunity. And all things being equal, in that moment when a decision is being made, you need somebody to say, yeah, but that, you know, that contract's not expiring then, we haven't got buy-in here. Yes, theoretically that problem is really worth solving, but might never happen, so we could just waste our time. This one is the better, more pragmatic decision. So until that point, there's like massive overlap between the two. And I think that there are different skills at the heart of both roles when you get to those key decision-making points. And was that of any use? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think my main question to you, actually, after hearing what you've just said, is: do you think it's entirely necessary to study as a service designer to get into product?
Oh, do I think it's necessary to study as a service designer to get into product? No, not necessary. Cool. I think it can be useful. I think if you have a service in your designer in your team, they might say it can be unhelpful. To be honest with you, I think if there aren't service designers, it's a thing that can be needed to be picked up. If there are service designers, it's equally useful to understand enough about that role to talk confidently with service designer as it is to understand any of the other skill sets in the role. I have seen it when people go too deep into any one skill in a team where somebody else represents that skill. It can kind of alienate and block that actual skill out as well. So I think there's a balance to be struck. But if I think back in the day, you know, starting off getting into product in the, you know, mid to late 2000s, service design wasn't so much of a standalone profession then. It wasn't even a term that I was super aware of. I was working in non-profit space. It was kind of late 2000s, early 2010s, it started to become an identity and a role in its own right. Certainly up until then, some of the things we might call service design were really useful for me to have in my kit bag to make decisions. So I led like an advocacy service for young parents in the early 2010s. We had to orientate ourselves versus all of the other charities and non-profits doing the same thing. What's our particular value? How do we sit into the landscape? You know, all of those broader things were necessary for really me to do because there was nobody else to do them. So in that context, yes. In a team where there is a service designer, I think it's really useful to understand all of the professions. But sometimes it can be problematic to go too deep, particularly if we end up loving it because we try and occupy that space ourselves.
Yeah.
I'll end with one question from Heather. Heather said, could you talk a little more about what you mean about building trust, not just features? Is this with building trust with your teams or with wider stakeholders? Heather, I would say it's both. I think what I mean by building trust is something isn't done when we present a logical plan or opportunity outline. People need to understand it and believe it if they're going to do it and act on it. So it could be that, yes, we've got something that says build X, Y, Z, but behind the scenes, if I think when I was a hands-on product manager, I might have spent a couple of weeks up until the point that becomes the plan or the ticket or the task or the user story, whatever you want to call it. The thing that needs to be done, I might have had one-to-ones with up to like 10 people, from internal senior colleagues to the members of the team to staff in the front line, to make sure that it was actually going to be useful once it was done. I think the best way that I can describe this practically is work with product folks who might be doing something in the prison service, for example. And this thing on its own might make total sense. But if we don't know that prison officers also have 10 to 20 other things that are changing around them, we don't know that for all of the talking that we do in the centre building digital stuff, they get to choose what they spend time getting their head around. And if the thing that they are choosing not to get their head around because they just haven't got the time in the day is your thing, you're stuck. So trust is not just trusting that the thing, the ticket, the user story, whatever you want to call it, is good enough to be built. It's trust that it's going to be useful when it is thrown out into the wild. And we've talked about soft skills, systems leadership skills, like orientation, service design. All of those things are, do we understand the messy reality of our customers or users and the organization? Because ultimately we've got to answer the questions, does anybody want it? Should we be the people doing it? Can we do it? And building trust is, you know, trust that we've made decisions based on all those criteria. Also, trust is people trust us enough to be honest, to let us into their space, to figure out the answers to those questions as well. There we go. We're coming up to 5 minutes to. I'm certain that's more than enough of my voice being heard by all of you, and that no doubt everybody needs to get on to either lunch or the next meeting. So unless there are any more questions, we will wrap it up there. Ace, we'll go with that. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for your
Scott.
time. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and attention. If you're going to any of our other talks, you're in for a good time. If you're not, then why not? Because they'll be excellent. I hope you have a good rest of the day and a good rest of the week. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye, everyone.